Hi, I'm Tofari of ROMANITAS Press, and in this video I'm going to talk about preparing for the Holy Week ceremonies. So we've reached Septuagesima Sunday, and we have a few weeks left before we start getting into Holy Week. And Holy Week is called by some liturgists the painful week because of all the various preparations that are involved for those special ceremonies. And these ceremonies, of course, are rather unique. They're the only time that you see them during the year. So a lot of the preparations or logistics that go with it are also rather unique and need to be planned for amply in advance. There's also the situation of adapting the execution of the ceremonies within the layout of your sanctuary and perhaps even your church. So there's a lot of preparations involved, and this will include for the priests, for the masters of ceremonies, for the sacristans, and even for others like the maybe you have the altar and rosary society where you have ladies who assist with various items that relate to the sanctuary and the sacristy. Now, I briefly wanted to say a word to priests about the Holy Week ceremonies. I think it's a very good idea that you start examining the ceremonies in advance rather than waiting till Holy Week itself. The reason for this is because the Holy Week ceremonies are a horse of their own color ritualistically from anything else. And having some advanced preparation can be very helpful for you becoming more comfortable with those ceremonies and thereby executing them in a more graceful manner. That includes maybe looking over the prayers that are going to be said, even rehearsing some of them in advance, seeing what the ceremonies have for when you have extra blessings, so you're not caught off guard by that either. Also, the order of what's going to take place, and obviously normally you would rely on your master of ceremonies to assist you with that, but of course you're a lot more comfortable if you have a better concept of what is coming one after the other. And in that respect, the serving or ceremonial notes that I have for Holy Week are a great help for that as well, as we're going to talk about here a little bit further in regards to the Masters of Ceremonies. Now, speaking to the Masters of Ceremonies in particular, a great and even invaluable resource, as I've been told, are the ceremonial or serving notes that I have compiled for Holy Week, which you can get via romanitaspress.com, my website. These notes have several unique advantages over, for instance, just Fortescue. First thing is these notes are written from the standpoint of what's called the High Mass form. They include the use of a first MC as well as a second MC. And the simple form of the Holy Week ceremonies, which usually just have several acolytes, as opposed to the solemn form, which has the deacon and subdeacon. The simple form notes that you'll generally see like in Fortescue or even mentioned in the OHS or by others, they do not include the position of Master of Ceremonies, either 1 and 2. So this is one advantage, is that Master of Ceremonies positions are already there, which is extremely helpful. In fact, I would even say almost, it's extremely important to have MCs because that way the celebrant can concentrate on what he needs to do rather than being concerned about what the servers are supposed to do, which is assumed in the simple form that you see in Fortescue. The other thing about my notes is they're much more highly detailed. They also include diagrams, and they also assign in particular the duties of each server and also if there are additional sacristans. So it makes it a lot easier for you to, as a Master of Ceremonies, to figure out who should be doing what. Also, these notes include a list of preparations that are very detailed for what is going to be needed for the ceremonies, and they're listed. I like to use bullet points. So as you can see here, you've got the various bullet points for the different preparations, and it also gives different options that might be necessary for these preparations as well too. As an example, for the readings of the Passion, I give all the different possibilities, whether you have all three deacons chanting, a celebrant chanting with a deacon and a schola, etc., etc. So that's all in there as well. Lots of copious footnotes as well to help show authoritatively what's being said from various rubricions. Also, there's a lot of helpful tips that you'll find in these notes that you won't find in other manuals. Another thing for Master Ceremonies, you need to start thinking of these ceremonies in advance. You don't want to wait until the actual practice to figure out where you want each person to go and how, depending on the layout of your sanctuary or even your church. This is something you really want to think out well in advance, and even diagram on a piece of paper. Walk it through a few times so you're comfortable with it. So that way, when it comes time for your practice, which you may only have a very limited amount of time, you already have set in your mind, here's where so-and-so is going to go. And you're not sitting there trying to figure it out during the practice. And it also has a problem with the servers too, because the servers in the meantime, if you don't have point A to point Z figured out already, they are sitting there trying to wait for you to figure out between D and G, and they're just standing around waiting, and then in the meantime you're revising because you realize, oh, this won't work because he'll bump into that or bump into this person, or etc., etc. So again, it helps overall for everybody to do that. In addition to the notes, I would also mention you should be reviewing the official liturgical books. In particular, we have the OHS, which contains the Holy Week ceremonies. This in itself can actually be used in place of the altar missal, and a lot of times people do. If you have, for instance, the Benziger Brothers altar missal, which I actually reprinted that. This is the 1962 edition. Again, all of Holy Week ceremonies are in there. It's just this OHS is really of great convenience because it's not as heavy of a book. It's easy to carry around. I also suggest sometimes you want to have several copies of the OHS available. I would say a minimum of 2, especially for the Easter Vigil ceremonies, because just of what happens. So again, if you have a missal and then you have an OHS, or you have just 2 missals, that's very, very helpful. You want to start reviewing those texts right away to get the sense of the layout. The prayers are going to be said, for instance, like where the priest actually blesses something. It's just a good idea for you as a Master of Ceremonies to start looking at it well in advance. Another is if you're involved with one of the, on Good Friday, for instance, when they have the chanting of the Passion, the Cantus Passionis books, if you can get your hands on one of those, take a look at it real quick. You can also find that, by the way, on musicasacra.com. They've actually put it up there. In addition to that is the Liber Usualis, of course, which is the compilation for the Gregorian chant. Again, you want to look through in advance. And the reason for this is because you should have some familiarity of when the chants take place, how long they're going to be, what impact they might have on your ceremony in particular. And lastly, and I would say extremely important, but often gets missed, is to read through the texts and the prayers in your daily missal. They are in English. Usually you'll have the Latin on the other side. You need to also have a spiritual sense of what's taking place. You remember, your position as Master of Ceremonies is also a position that enables you to help sanctify yourself and to grow in holiness. And a great portion of that is knowing what is going on during the actual ceremonies. So again, to know what is being said. It'll also help you to better understand the ceremonies as well too. Now I want to say something in particular about the preparations for Holy Week, which can get rather intimidating because a lot of the things that are going to be used are only used once a year for Holy Week. One thing I have done at my parish over years was put together a pictorial record of what we used for certain ceremonies. So that way, when this comes time for the ceremony to roll around, or I'm getting ready to prep for it, usually a couple weeks in advance, I can just thumb through real quick this little pictorial record, and I know not only exactly what items I used from my sacristy, but even how I set them up on the table. And it makes it so much easier. I went from taking a couple hours to preparing, and I reduced it down to about an hour, because between me, my second MC, and the sacristans involved, we were able to knock this out real quick, because we already knew, oh, this was the way we set it up on the table in the years past, which we worked. And in fact, you know, the pictorial record, we from year to year to year, we would make little minor changes, and we'd take new pictures and then incorporate that. And we actually made this into a little 3-ring binder. Okay, or we coil bound this. You can do that. And we did it with our notes. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel every single year. We already knew. We also then had a record of the inventory of the items we needed to be prepared. And as I said before, this helps to reduce your preparation time substantially. Another thing, like I said on the ceremonial notes that I have for Holy Week, there's already a list there of the various items you'll need for each specific ceremony. And including in that, for instance, I have someone that would help to polish and clean things, and I would bring them in a week or two in advance. They had a list of the things that they were to clean, which in fact was on the pictorial record, and they would take it all out, get it all cleaned, put it away in a special spot so it wasn't touched again until we needed it for the ceremonies. So that was out of the way too. So when it came, for instance, for the Easter Vigil, when we came in Easter Vigil morning, it was all there ready for us just to put out, everything. And this also included, for instance, like the necessary linens we would need, because Good Friday everything had been stripped. We'd have the credence tables already prepared in advance. The altars were going to be prepared in about almost no time at all. So we had everything coordinated so we could bang, 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 just knock everything out. This is another thing too, is if you have, for instance, ladies in your parish, and they're the ones that take care of your altar linens, you're going to want to consult with them in advance so they know exactly what you're going to need for your ceremonies. There's some special things that can occur with that. You may also want to check and see if there's some things you need to purchase, or you maybe even want to make. And if it's a purchasing item, remember some parishes, they may take a week or two to get clearance, permission to be able to purchase it. Plus you have to consider delivery date from wherever you're purchasing it from. Religious supply companies get very busy just before Holy Week, as they do for Christmas as well. Something else you can do is, of course, make notes about material improvements you can make from year to year to year. I had to do a lot of work to build things up at places, and we would just every year, okay, can we do this a little bit differently? What can we make even better? Another little just tip out there, you know, with liturgical ceremonies, sometimes you need a lot of things like trays and bowls, stuff like that. And it can be difficult to find it or expensive, especially if you want it in silver or maybe in brass. Maybe you even just want some plain glassware, which can be done too for holding the lemons or the bread or something. A great tip is, you know, go to an antique store, your local antique store, and see what you can pick out. And sometimes you can find some great deals on flat trays that are silver, or some bowls or everything. eBay as well too. You got to be a little more careful there. Make sure the quality is you know what you're paying for. But anyways, if you're looking to build up your collection for having those what they call salvers, is what they're called in English, or, you know, flat trays, or, you know, different sizes. They all come in handy for different ceremonies, depending on what you're doing. I'll give you an idea here. If you're looking at this picture here, this bowl here is actually a punch bowl, and when I got it, it needed to be replated, and I went and had it replated, and now we use it for the Easter water. Everything else you see in here, from the ewer and pitcher to the silver bowl to this tray here, all of this was purchased through antique stores. I did not purchase these things brand new, and we have a whole collection of things now that we can use because of that. Okay, so that's the end of this video segment about preparing for Holy Week, which I hope has been somewhat helpful for you. Again, you can go to romanitaspress.com to get those ceremonial notes. It's under ceremonial notes, which is under products or store. Also, there are other things that I have up there too, like the Learning About the Roman Liturgy podcasts. We're going to be producing some more videos as well. So please take a look through romanitaspress.com. Please subscribe to my free email updates that I offer. And please subscribe to the YouTube videos, which are going to be coming. You'll see the link down below for that. And until next, take care and God bless.